Georgia. Here we go. We have our first set of college football playoff rankings back here with CBS Sports college football insider Richard Johnson. Let's welcome in former Ohio State standout Beanie Wells and former Alabama standout A.J. McCarron, the first quarterback in the BCS era to win back-to-back national championships. Ohio State looking to run it back. I had to work that in there, Beanie. All right, top four seeds. Here we go. It's Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama. A.J., are you surprised with the top four seeds here?
No, not at all. I thought Ohio State and Indiana have both been ranked up there all year. You got to put them in those spots. A&M and the SEC, strength of schedule, their record, it speaks for itself. And then Alabama, I think, is the hottest team in college football right now. Just from strength of schedule, the opponents they've played on a consecutive week-to-week basis, it makes sense for them to be in the top four.
You have any problem with the top four, Richard?
No, I think the top four shakes out as I thought. I went through this exercise ranking on Sunday for CBSSports.com, and, maybe I think Indiana a little bit better than Ohio State, I don't know, but you couldn't parse the resumes, right? When you stack the resumes with it, yes, Ohio State's resume does take it slightly above Indiana when you go and do it. And I agree with AJ on the Alabama point. They are not the team that lost to Florida State. I understand it is a result that happens, and I understand that is how you parse them versus Texas A&M, but I agree with AJ when he says Alabama's the hottest team in the country right now.
Yeah, they have four ranked wins. I mean, they have four ranked wins, which is more than anybody in FBS. Beanie, when you look at it, you could have made an argument that Alabama should be number one in the college football rankings when you talk about record strength and all of the metrics now that they are evaluating. But I still believe the committee values a 0 in the loss column, which is why they went Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M. What's your reaction to the top four?
I agree with it 100%. I think Ohio State and Indiana, those are the two teams that you could sit there and split hairs with. But when we talk about Alabama, they are one of the best, most improved teams in college football this season. But they do indeed have one of the worst losses now, especially when you look at how Florida State has played. So I think taking that into consideration, they're placed right where they should be. Texas A&M, another dominant football team, them playing in the SEC and them dominating the competition, I think certainly matters. I really love how the committee evaluated these teams and came together with their bracket. This is one of the unique years where I don't have a problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah, top four look pretty good right now. Richard, what are you thinking about the top four and how they played out so far in this first reveal?
Well, I think it's interesting with Texas A&M, though. Of these four, Texas A&M, although undefeated, especially with the SEC teams are concerned, Texas A&M's strength of schedule is a little, now it's undefeated. And your point about having a 0 in the loss column is massive, and that is helping A&M as well it should. But if they are to take a loss coming home, I'm very interested in where they would shake out because their strength of schedule, it's going to be in the teens. It's not going to be the strength of schedule that an Alabama has, for instance.
Yeah, and let's talk about their schedule. They have Missouri coming up on the road, which is always a tough place to play. And then they've got Texas to end the regular season. So this could look a lot different come 4 weeks here when we have another release.
Yeah, they're playing great ball right now, obviously, but Texas looks like they are starting to figure some things out. They're going to go to Austin Black Friday night, and it's going to be a powder keg.
Texas is 11th in the latest college football rankings, the first of the year. AJ, what have you seen from Texas? Is this a team you believe that will be ending up in the field when all is said and done?
No. Listen, I think they lose to A&M last game of the year. I think that third loss knocks them out. Would I love to see another SEC school in there? Yes, but I think one of the other 10-2 teams that the SEC will fill in that spot. The best thing that this committee has done compared to other years, and the biggest thing I was looking for is where did they have Ole Miss ranked compared to BYU and Notre Dame? It was the SEC and Greg Sankey adding this 9th in-conference game and going back and forth with the committee all off season, and ESPN throwing out money and saying, hey, 50 to 80 million for a 9th in-conference game. And Greg Sankey fighting it at the beginning saying, okay, well, if you want a 9th in-conference game, we want the metric of strength of schedule actually thought of and put into the thought process of coming out with these rankings. And I think by having Ole Miss ranked 6 shows that the committee has finally bought into and is full on committed to the strength of schedule. And that's awesome to see.
Yeah, they sit obviously right behind Georgia right there. Okay, you defer to Georgia as the team that beat them. But yes, Ole Miss with good wins against Oklahoma, for instance, sits there. And I think they're right about where they should be as well. We'll see if they can keep it. Last year, remember, Ole Miss looked pretty good, and then they clunked the way home. I think this Ole Miss team is a little bit more solidly built, but we saw last year that you can't just write them in. That Egg Bowl is always a funky game, no matter how good the teams are. Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby's Bulldogs would love nothing more than to spoil the party for Ole Miss Thanksgiving weekend.
What does it tell you about this first set of rankings that Texas Tech and BYU are in the first set, and they, oh, by the way, happen to play this Saturday?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think we'll decide kind of the Big 12 team that gets to stay in the party after this weekend. I was a little surprised that BYU is as high as they are. Now,
Undefeated, though.
I understand undefeated, so they're going to be ahead of Texas Tech. But it is a little curious. And also, obviously, Texas Tech with a weird loss. I don't even know if you call it a bad loss against Arizona State, but it is a very weird loss to have. And you're probably able to get over that if they are able to get over the hump and they're able to beat BYU. But I mean that because I think BYU's been getting away with it a lot this season. And we'll see when the rubber meets the road against Texas Tech this weekend if they will continue to.
Beanie, what are some other things that jump out to you here on this first set of rankings?
I think the team that I was more curious to see where they were ranked was Notre Dame, and Notre Dame sitting right there at that 10th spot. I find it fitting, and I'm glad the committee didn't penalize them for having 2 losses, considering how they did indeed lose the Texas A&M game. I thought that was a game that really could have went either way, and if it wasn't for human error, we're looking at that situation being a win for Notre Dame and them being a 1-loss team. So, kudos to the committee for getting that one right, but also BYU. I'm really curious their thought process on BYU throughout the way. It's clear that they believe they're one of the best teams in the country because they are undefeated. But like Richard just said, they have been playing it kind of close to the vest. And we saw last season BYU late in the year, they got to about 9-0, and that's where the wheels came falling off that football team. But they are built a little bit different with freshman quarterback and Bear Bachmeier and L.J. Martin. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game does indeed pan out this coming weekend.
Do you think it will be an eliminator, this game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
You think it will be? Do you think the Big 12 ends up getting 2 teams in at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think because if Texas Tech can win this game and then win out, I mean, they may play BYU again,
right?
In the Big 12 championship game. But I do think this is an elimination game because I don't know if Texas Tech can get in with 2 losses. Then again, obviously, if Texas Tech ends up being the Big 12 champion, they'll find a way, and then it could be a 2-way.
Well, and we could very well have the Big 10 champion, right, with 1 loss, right? Like, if Indiana and Ohio State, they're on a collision course right now, we could very well have a situation there. Both teams are in with a loss. That wouldn't be a big deal, but then we figure out where they're going to be ranked, because if you look at Alabama, if they run the table rest of way, then we're going to have some interesting questions to answer in the coming weeks. Right now, we're answering the initial questions. AJ, what else sticks out to you about these initial rankings here?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is seeing where they have the Big 12 schools. Because, listen, people are going to say it's biased, but I think if you go off a strength of schedule, a 10-2 SEC school, take a Vandy, Texas, a school like that where a 1-loss BYU, I think a 2-loss SEC, just based off of strength of schedule, gets the bump, and you add a 5th or possibly 6th SEC school to this thing. Listen, it's usually tries to balance itself out, right, with the Big Ten and the SEC. The Big Ten's down this year more than it's been in the past probably 10 years from a sense of just their top teams. No Michigan, no Penn State. Listen, Oregon is not promised in this thing either. They got a tough one this weekend. So, I mean, you could possibly only have 2, most likely 3 Big Ten schools in this thing. I think that opens the door for another SEC school to be in this, because I don't believe the committee takes a two teams from the Big 12. I just don't see it.
The SEC should absolutely be in drive for five mode, so to speak, here when we get down to it the first weekend of December. I think if it keeps tracking like this, honestly, you're going to have bye week deciders in both the conference championship games if the top four stay like this. I also look a little bit further down the rankings. I look at number 20, Iowa. That's going to be really interesting if Oregon can get over that hump this weekend. That's going to boost Oregon and give Oregon a lift, I think, in next week's rankings. But that game is not a given. AJ just told you, by the way, this Iowa team gave Indiana everything they wanted down to the fourth quarter in that game. Oregon better watch out. They can lose that game.
Yeah, and that game you can see on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus. Oregon on the road in Iowa City, a ranked on ranked, which will be huge for Oregon if they can go in and win. That's going to be a strength on strength game, as well as Iowa's one of the best in not allowing points, and Oregon's the best at scoring points. So we'll see how that shakes out. Certainly will have implications on the college football playoff. Much more ahead here on CBS Sports HQ with our crew breaking down the field, the projected field. The top 12 are in. Who's going to win it all? We continue to discuss. Keep it locked. You're watching CBS Sports HQ. A huge night in America. The first college football playoff rankings have been released. Here's a look at your top 12. But those will not be the teams in the projected field because a group of 5 team will come to play, and that team will be Memphis as of right now. They would face Georgia in the first round. Oregon and Texas Tech in the 8-9 matchup. Hope you take the over in that game because that'll be awesome. Virginia and Ole Miss, interesting matchup in the first round perhaps. Notre Dame and BYU, that'll be also an awesome matchup. And you look at what could happen in the quarters. We could see Alabama and Georgia renewing pleasantries. Ohio State perhaps facing Oregon for the second year in a row in the quarterfinals. Texas A&M, maybe another matchup against an SEC opponent, Ole Miss, and Indiana. Look at this. This is all kind of shaping up nicely, here? Indiana and Notre Dame met in the first round last year. Could they meet in the second round or the quarterfinals, if you will, this year? All right, back here with the crew, Richard Johnson, AJ McCarron, and Beanie Wells. And Richard, I'm fascinated every time we see these projections. We're in year 2 of this, but it's always exciting when you see a school up there, maybe that's been up there for the first time, right? You see Memphis, you see Ole Miss, you have the new blood into the playoff, a BYU. You see these teams that are going to be maybe here consistently. Notre Dame is back, the runner-up from last year. What jumps out to you about the projected bracket?
Look, we know it won't hold.
Right.
Sorry, BYU.
Maybe.
I want Indiana, Notre Dame Part 2 so badly. Watching that rematch would be incredible. I did a story on Indiana about a month ago, spoke to athletic director Scott Dolson. He told me that coming off the field last year in South Bend, he and Kurt Cignetti were already talking about the things that Indiana needed to do to make sure that they could be competitive next year in 2025 if they were to face a team like Notre Dame. Again, I talked to Mark Cuban, Indiana alum. He told me how much he hates Notre Dame. That in-state grudge match, would love to see that if they were able to play again this year.
AJ, is there a matchup that jumps out to you here on the projected field?
I really like the Oregon versus Texas Tech matchup. I think that's your best first-round game. 2 evenly high-powered offenses that can put up a ton of points. And I just really like that matchup. I think it's tough for either team, either way. So that's probably the most intriguing matchup of the first round right now.
I'd have to pick it back off of Richard. I want to see that Indiana-Notre Dame matchup. I thought Indiana last year had an opportunity to feel what it's like to kind of be nationally relevant in the college football world and landscape. And they had that taste, and now they love it. Kirk Cignetti is galvanize this organization. And now this team is primed to be in position to not just get a taste, but to really make a legitimate run at a college football playoff championship. Last year, I thought, obviously, they were the surprise Cinderella story of college football, just getting a chance to get there and be in that position where they're talked about. But this year, this team is built completely different, top to bottom. They have a legitimate shot at being the national championship team at the end of the year because of the way Kirk Cinetti has orchestrated and delved into diving and getting this team ready to be contending at a national level.
How about a hypothetical Oregon versus Texas Tech matchup, right? Oregon was the team that, with Phil Knight's money, bought their way into college football relevance. Quite frankly, Phil Knight's decision in the early 90s to spend and spend and spend is, quite frankly, the first domino that ends up with Oregon all the way now being in the Big Ten, but playing a Texas Tech team that over the summer spent a whole lot of money on that roster. And guess what? They bought a whole lot of players who can play. And seeing those two teams match up would be such an interesting culture clash, styles make fight situation about how you can spend your way to college football relevance, the old way and the new way.
And Beanie, we could have another matchup of Ohio State and Oregon if the Ducks are able to get past the Red Raiders there. That's also spicy.
Oh, no question about it. And we know how Dan Lanning is when, his back is against the wall and he's already, faced the adversity of going out and being dominated versus Ohio State last season, wanting to get another opportunity to kind of be in that Ali Frazier type atmosphere. I think that would make for an incredible football game. Oregon, we know, is a team that can score with the best of them. And then we know Ohio State, that mammoth of a defense that they have. If they continue this trend, that's a matchup that I most certainly have circled.
As you take a look at Oregon's resume right now, Richard, and we talked a little bit about what they have coming up. They're going on the road to play Iowa. And look, that could be an upset. I mean, this Iowa team is nasty. I mean, they could clamp you down, especially at home.
Oregon's best win to date is Northwestern. I think Oregon is a really, really good football team. But when you look at the resume to date, Oregon's best win is Northwestern. Now, they get a chance to render all of that moot this weekend if they're able to beat Iowa, and then later this season when they face Washington in the rivalry matchup. So it's not going to matter at the end of the season if they can navigate the rest of their schedule unscathed. But to date, Oregon's resume is not good.
Yeah, you take a look at it, and it's the win against Penn State, which basically becomes almost unranked. I mean, in the eyes of what happened, it was a ranked win, but now you look at it, and it sort of gets dumbed down, right? Like, how do you think the committee looks at that kind of qualification? How are they going to look at a team when they go, okay, well, that was a ranked win, but now that team is fallen off the map?
Yeah, I think that the committee has to go on its rankings from here to the end, and they re-rank every week, and they judge teams like that every week. Well, it doesn't matter what Penn State had done to date back at the end of September when Penn State really hadn't beaten anybody on their own resume to date. I was at that game. It was a whiteout atmosphere. It was a really, really electric college football atmosphere. But you've seen what Penn State then went on to do, and now Drew Aller hurt, James Franklin fired, and the season is completely lost for Penn State. But yeah, it's about, if you're going to talk about ranked wins, I'm talking about what the resumes are now when you've got a much more full body of work than just Penn State's non-conference schedule to date, which had such luminaries as I believe Kent State was on it.
Well, this game means more for Oregon, right? Because now they're going to be facing a ranked Iowa squad who comes in as 20th in the nation, according to the College Football Playoff rankings. Let's take a look at the top 25 now so that you can see the teams here that are in the mix. We look at the top 12 here, Texas and Oklahoma, teams on the bubble. Let's go further down on the outside, Utah, Virginia, Louisville, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Miami coming in at 13 through 18. And then after that, it's USC, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, Washington, Pitt, and Tennessee. And Richard, there's some teams that could perhaps sneak in. Is there a team on the outside looking in that you think may work its way into the field in a month's time from now?
I don't know about working their way all the way up into the field, but I am looking at that Pitt team that's sitting there at, I believe, 24. And I'm saying, that's interesting. They are going to get Notre Dame later in the season. They are going to get Miami later in the season. Watch out for them. Iowa could frankly be a dark horse if they make a run here. If they can beat Iowa, if they can navigate the rest of that schedule unscathed, I think they probably have to find a way to sneak into the Big Ten championship game, which means, Ohio State.
Which means Ohio State would lose to Michigan.
Right. Ohio State
That's
would
a
probably
possibility.
have to lose to Michigan.
Yeah, I know. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead.
I had to give it
That's
to you.
not a
have to.
possibility.
You'd have to.
Not a possibility.
I'm sorry, Beanie. I'm sorry.
What did Beanie say? What did Beanie say?
It's not a possibility at all.
Oh, he said, did you say no possibility?
Yeah.
No possibility this year.
They have to play the game in Ann Arbor. There's a possibility, Beanie.
Nah. Not agreed.
AJ, can you tell I'm an Ohio State fan? I'm from the same neck of the woods as Beanie is from, so there's always a path, and we're sitting here talking about Iowa having a path. What do you think of that? Because certainly a team that's on the outside, some people might think that they're underrated.
No, I think, listen, Iowa's been so bad on offense for so long that people forget, how good of a team they used to be and how well they've played defense. The surprise team for me, though, guys, is Louisville. I really think Louisville has a chance of getting in. You look at the rest of their schedule. They got Cal, Clemson, SMU, and then Kentucky to end the year. And then, who do they face in the ACC championship? Possibly Georgia Tech. I mean, that's a game they can win. And I really think Louisville has a shot of getting in this thing.
Louisville, Isaac Brown being hurt, we'll see the impact of that on their offense. I was at that Miami-Louisville game when Louisville really announced themselves as a contender in the ACC, not just a dark horse. We'll see how Louisville's offense is able to hold on. I also think we should probably stop overlooking Utah, right? I mean, Utah is also sitting there. We talked about this earlier. I don't think, unless there's a bid stealing situation, don't really think the Big 12 is going to get two teams in. But we do have to mention that Utah is still sitting there. Utah has looked good over the last couple weeks, but again, I do think Utah is beating up on teams they are clearly physically better than. My thing with Utah is what happens when you match up with teams that are at about your level. That was the old way where Utah would still be able to throw those teams out of the paint. I don't know if Utah still has it like that.
So if the Big 12 only gets one team in, then that opens the door certainly for another SEC team in Texas or Oklahoma, right?
4, 5.
Right.
Say it with me now, folks.
Drive for 5. But Texas and Oklahoma are among the first two out here. They're firmly on the bubble, and those are two teams that have played each other. Of course, Texas beat Oklahoma. It's a top 10 win for them. Their other win coming against Vanderbilt. That could be a huge factor here if the Big 12 does not get a second team in, because Texas, there are a couple losses here. We know the one about Ohio State. Look, this is a team, some people think they're formidable. Some people think they're not.
Well, you'd have to consider this. If Texas were to win out, they would beat Georgia and they would beat Texas A&M. Now, that might knock Georgia out, or at least put Georgia very much on the ropes themselves. So that may ruin our drive for 5 mantra here, or at least put it into doubt. But Texas has a chance. They just have to win out. I do not think a 3-loss Texas finds their way in.
No way.
Because their loss to Florida is not a good loss at all. Not at all.
How about Vanderbilt? Vanderbilt's a team that I'm really interested in seeing because in the SEC, we all know there's going to be so much carnage down the stretch with these teams that beat themselves up and beat themselves out of a position. But Vanderbilt, in my opinion, could be a team sitting right there that could legitimately win the rest of their football games. I know it'd be a battle, when we look at the deep end of their season, but they could legitimately win the rest of their football games. And they have the 2 losses that they do have are versus very good football teams. So I think you certainly have to consider them, and you look at what they were able to do on the offensive end and how they were able to, come back in that game last week, scoring 21 points in the 4th quarter. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they may not be the team to climb back in this thing.
I love Vanderbilt. AJ, you love Vanderbilt? What do you think of their chances?
Listen, Vandy or Tennessee cancel each other out because
Yep.
they play each other last game of the year, right? So one of those should be 10-2. You look at Texas. If Texas beats A&M and Georgia, they're at 10-2. A&M could be at 11-1 at the end of the year. Bama, if Bama were to slip up against Oklahoma, they're now at 10-2. That means Oklahoma's at 10-2. And then you got Georgia possibly at 10-2. So are you saying we're not going to take 5 or 4 10-2 SEC teams and we would take, a one-loss BYU. Like, I just can't see that happening. Strength of schedule, just off of the first ranking system that they came out with tonight, shows me that, hey, they bought into what Greg Sankey was preaching. Listen, we'll add this 9th in-conference game, but I better get a for sure on strength of schedule is going to be one of the metrics you go by big time this year.
I don't think this is going to happen, but what if Alabama really stubs a toe coming home here? Like, what if they lose the Iron Bowl and don't go to the SEC championship game? I don't think that's going to happen. I think Alabama's hottest team in the SEC right now. But if they do, how far would Alabama topple? Would they fall out of this top 11, top 10 here?
I don't think so. I mean,
they would have two. An Alabama
hear you.
team that would lose hypothetically in the Iron Bowl would have horrible losses. It would be a loss to Florida State and a loss to Auburn to bookend their regular season if it were to shake out that way. Those are really, really bad losses for a good football team.
But if they were to beat Oklahoma, that would give them 5 ranked wins, right? If you're saying they stubbed their toe at the end of the season, Alabama with 5 ranked wins would likely have more ranked wins than anybody in the nation. So to me, that would still equal a top 10 team, right? I mean, that's
I agree with you 100%.
Just look at the metrics.
Hakeem. Yeah, I agree with you 100% because, listen, B-Dub knows more than anybody. When it comes to a rivalry game, and especially playing in Jordan-Hare, there's no telling what could happen, all right? But rivalry games, the schedule, the record, everything's out of the window. And people, listen, I understand everybody's on this train of how bad Auburn is right now. But before their loss to Kentucky this past weekend, their biggest loss was against A&M, I believe, by like 10. I mean, they had lost by 6, 7, and 10. It was a total of 29 points in 4 losses. I mean, their offense just can't score, but their defense has been superb all year and has kept them in games when their offense couldn't do anything. So you never know what's going to happen in these rivalry games, but I'm with Hakeem. I think even if they did slip up after beating Oklahoma and say the craziest stuff happens, and trust me, I've been a part of it, a kick 6 with 1 second left. It doesn't get any crazier than that, okay?
Yeah, you brought it up. I didn't.
To our 3rd national championship. But I think still Bama would be a top 12 team and get in.
Yeah, I know all about rivalry games. So does Beanie. You lose to Michigan and then you run the table, right? So they lose to Michigan for a 4th year in a row and then they win the national championship. So the rivalry games, he's right.
Yeah.
Those have to be part of the equation when you look at the committee because they are, and there's no way to really qualify. They are different games, quote unquote.
Well, the one thing that we've got to also quantify this is we're talking about a top 11 and a top 12. As it currently stands, the cutoff to make the playoff with this bracket I'm looking at right now is 10 because you've got to put your 4th power conference champion in there in the ACC. You've got the Virginia team, who's the ACC leader, currently on the outside looking in, but would get in because they would be the 11th seed. And then you've got Memphis, which isn't even ranked, and is your group of 5 leaders, so to speak. Then they would be. So you may have a situation where it's not really 11 spots up for grabs. It's actually maybe 10 spots up for grabs because of the teams that are on the outside looking in who get auto bids.
Well, we are going to do this 5 more times, so I'm already enjoying the conversation here. Great discussion, A.J. McCarron, Beanie Wells, and Richard Johnson here on CBS Sports HQ. Men, thanks as we take a look at the projected bracket. I love this stuff. I mean, I eat this stuff for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is exciting, Richard. I mean, when we see a bracket, this gets me excited for Selection Sunday at the end of this. This gets me excited because, well, number one, my team's in there, Ohio State, and people are going to say, well, I don't know if Ohio State's number 1 in the land. We'll see. Look, the playoff is here. Here's the projected bracket, our first, again, of 6 college football playoff reveals, and we will be here each and every Tuesday and on the final Sunday when the final rankings are released. Coming up, we take a look at the Week 11 games that will have implication on the college football playoff. That's next. You're watching CBS Sports HQ. Keep it locked. Big games in Week 11. Here's a look at the notable ones. Indiana plays on the road at Penn State. A Big 12 battle between BYU and Texas Tech. You know where they are right now in the college football playoff rankings. Texas Tech is 8, BYU is 7. A ranked-on-ranked matchup in the SEC, Texas A&M and Missouri. And then our Big 10 game of the week, Oregon clashing with Iowa, who's now number 20 in the college football playoff rankings on CBS. All right, back here at CBS Sports College Football insider Richard Johnson. Indiana's remaining regular season opponents are a combined 0-16 in Big Ten play this season. Penn State, Wisconsin, Purdue. Hoosiers are 14.5-point favorites against the Nittany Lions this week. First time being favored over Penn State since 1978. Richard, you laying the big number with the Hoosiers.
Give me Indiana. Give me minus 14.5. Give me 17. Give me 20. Give me 3 touchdowns. I think Indiana handles business. I think Indiana trying to get Fernando Mendoza the Heisman gives you a little bit. They may take this game deep into the fourth quarter potentially with Fernando Mendoza racking up a big number. They showed you last week. You take away the pass, it's no problem. We will run it all over you. Give me the Hoosiers.
Heisman Mendoza, their second best odds behind my guy Julian Sayin. Indiana seeking its second straight 10-0 start. BYU seeking back-to-back 9-0 starts for the first time in school history. It's a Big 12 battle on Saturday. BYU against Texas Tech. Red Raiders are double-digit favorites, and they're right in neck and neck here in the college football playoff rankings. Texas Tech 8, BYU 7. Who do you like in this spot?
Give me Texas Tech. Give me Texas Tech at the number that they are too. I think this situation is BYU, frankly, been getting away with it the last few weeks. I think it stops here. I think Texas Tech is built too solidly to play with their food and lose this game. I understand the Arizona State game happened. It was a stubbed toe. They don't stub their toe in this game on Saturday night.
All right, it's going to have huge college football playoff implications in Lubbock. A big one there in the Big 12 still ahead. Winners and losers. We'll break down those teams from the first CFP bracket reveal. Who's sitting pretty and who's got some work to do? That's next on CBS Sports HQ. Show me the bracket. The first college football playoff rankings have been released. Here's a look at the projected bracket. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama would receive a first-round bye. Seeds 5 through 12 will play each other in the first round. The higher-seeded teams will play host. Memphis taking on Georgia. Oregon visiting Texas Tech in a matchup that features 2 of the top 10 teams in terms of total yards per game. Virginia would be the projected ACC champ taking on Ole Miss. Notre Dame clashing with BYU with a looming date against Indiana. They met last year with Notre Dame moving on, ultimately getting to the national championship and losing to Ohio State. Welcome in CBS Sports college football insider Richard Johnson, CBS Sports HQ college football analyst Brad Crawford, and 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden here to break down their winners and losers. And what a night it was. We get our first bracket reveal here, Richard. Who's your biggest winner from the first CFP rankings?
I'm going to give you both sides of the Holy War rivalry. I see BYU sitting at number 7. I see Utah sitting at number 13. I think both of those teams are big winners. Kind of forgot about Utah. Kind of say, oh, well, they don't really have, a bunch of good wins. They've sort of fallen off the pace. And so I kind of a little surprised to see them where they are, to be quite frank. BYU doesn't really have a good resume. Do think they've been getting away with it a little bit the last few weeks, but BYU sitting right there with it all to play for. Now, obviously, big matchup against Texas Tech this weekend. That's going to decide, quite frankly, I believe, BYU's fate regarding will they actually make the college football playoff pending Big 12 title game potentially in December. But for now, I take both those teams as big winners with the first college football playoff rankings.
Brad, who stands out to you as a big winner here on the first college football playoff rankings?
Yeah, my 2 big winners tonight are Notre Dame, obviously, at number 10. I mean, that's one team right now that has 1 win over a top 25 opponent. That's USC. Lost to Miami head-to-head, and Miami is 6 spots back of Notre Dame. So that shows you right there, head-to-head only comes into consideration with this committee if all comparable outcomes and everything else is even. So it's obvious the committee does not view Miami as anywhere near Notre Dame's tier despite beating them head-to-head. And my second team right now is Iowa, 2-loss Iowa. You know what Iowa's best win is this season? It's a 5-point loss at unbeaten against Indiana. I mean, that's their best win, and it was a loss. Right now, Minnesota is the only team with a winning record that Iowa's beaten. The Hawkeyes have USC and Oregon coming up. So there's a scenario in which that if Iowa wins out and wins 10 games and beats those 2 ranked teams, I think Iowa is one of the Big Ten's at-large teams in this bracket. And them at number 20 tonight is a major win for the Hawkeyes.
Well, for me, I have two big winners also. I'll start with Ole Miss. Coming in at number 6, they're one of my bigger winners because of them being 8-1 and currently at the 6th spot. So when you look at what Ole Miss has done, they only have 2 ranked wins on their schedule so far this season, beating LSU earlier in the year and a few weeks ago going on the road to Norman and beating the Oklahoma Sooners. That game basically stamped their approval to be in the playoffs. Now, there's a lot of football left to be played when you look at the schedule the rest of the way for the Rebels. They got the Citadel, they got UF, and they got Mississippi State. Clearly, they will be the favorites in all 3 ball games. But because of what they did a few weeks ago, beating Oklahoma on the road, worst case scenario, guys, let's say there was a slip up in one of these 3 ball games, and they finished the season with only 2 losses, they still would get into the playoffs being currently 6, sitting at the 6th spot. So Ole Miss, they're one of my biggest winners. The second biggest winner for me is the entire conference of the Big 12. Rich, you talked about the Big 12 currently. As we see it today, they have 2 teams in the top 12. BYU at 6, BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8. Yes, both teams, they will play each other this weekend. But regardless, when you look at both teams currently being inside the top 8, either or has room for blemish, not to mention having a Big 12 championship game. Hypothetically speaking, let's say BYU beats Texas Tech and they play against Texas Tech or Utah in the Big 12 championship game and lose. They still would get in my opinion, and the committee would take the Big 12 champion. So looking at what we saw tonight, the revealing of the top rankings, I love the Big 12 and where they currently sit, and they're one of my biggest winners, along with Ole Miss.
Richard, that's going to be interesting to see what they do with the Big 12, right? Because if they only take 1, that opens up the door for the 2 teams on the outside looking in right now, Texas and Oklahoma, which you could say they're sort of winners and losers, right? They're sort of hanging there on the bubble, but they've got an opportunity.
Yeah, and they sit there and you consider the fact that Oklahoma's got that Bama game, for instance, later in the season to boost their resume. You look at the fact that Texas has Georgia and Alabama. Now, obviously, Texas is going to have to run the table, but if they're able to, right? If they're able to beat Georgia and Texas A&M coming down the stretch, you never know. Texas absolutely ends up in the college football playoff if they do that.
A drive for 5. I've been saying it with
5.
you. Drive for 5 for the SEC. That's what they're trying to campaign for here. All right, Brad, I'm going to go your way. Who's your biggest loser from the first CFP rankings?
Got to be Miami and the ACC as a whole. I mean, Brian kind of mentioned it. You know, 3 Big 12 teams right now are ahead of the ACC's highest ranked team, which is Virginia. Virginia is a successful 2-point conversion by the Tar Heels away from probably being 7-2 and unranked. That's how bad the ACC is right now in the eyes of this committee. You look at Miami there, I don't see a path for the Hurricanes at number 18 to get into this 12-team bracket. They're not going to make the ACC championship game, so throw the auto bid chance out the window. And you see there, the CFP chance is at 14%. So no top 12 teams right now for the ACC. Miami was the preseason favorite to win that league along with Clemson. And man, Miami falling down that much was real bad. And then my second loser is Vanderbilt. They're outside of the top 15 right now. I think at number 16 tonight after losing that game over the weekend to Texas. Vandy has to essentially jump 4 or 5 spots. And there's only 1 ranked team left on the schedule to do so, and that's Tennessee at number 25. So we see right now what the committee thinks of the 6-3 Vols.
I'm taking the whole ACC as my big loser, Brad, to jump off your point. Yes, Miami's sitting there at 18, but then you've got Virginia and Louisville who are outside of the top 12, but obviously because you've got to have the 4th conference champion in, power conference champion in, the ACC leader, Virginia, would be in the hypothetical college football playoff bracket. But yes, it's just an absolute treatise on the weakness of the ACC to have all those ACC teams on the outside looking in of even the top 10 in the college football playoff initial rankings.
And BMAC, you agree here with Richard that the ACC is one of your losers here from the first rankings?
No question. You heard what Brad said. Their best team is at 14.
Yep.
That's Virginia. They're at 14. And we know when you look at college football, especially in the ACC, seeing what happened this past weekend, there's going to be a few more slip-ups, right? They needed Georgia Tech to win last week. That was the team that was really the clear-cut favorite in terms of controlling their destiny, in terms of their style of play, along with the quarterback play. But what happened with them last week losing, that really threw a wrench into the entire mindset of the ACC. So best case scenario, as we see it tonight, they will get only one. Only one. That's the best case scenario when you look at how the top 12 is sitting currently based on the rankings tonight. Outside of the entire ACC being one of my biggest losers, I'm sorry, Volunteer fans, but I got to do it.
Yeah.
It's the Tennessee Volunteers. They're my biggest loser. Number one, they're barely in the top 25. That's number one. Number two, when you look at how they started the season, when you look at what they've done so far, statistically speaking, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Statistically speaking, one of the best offenses in college football. And get this, you had Georgia at home. You controlled that ball game for 3.5 quarters, right? You had Oklahoma at home. That was the game. Even with the blemish to Georgia, if you beat Oklahoma, you're in a total different position right now. But you lost to Oklahoma at home as well. So regardless of what chaos could potentially happen between now and the end of the season, Tennessee will not be anywhere. They won't be anywhere close to being in the top 12 when you look at what happened last week. Last week was a game 7 for them. They lost. They went home. They needed to win that ball game to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, I mean, they already lost before the rankings even came out. I mean, 3 losses here in this CFP format with 12 teams. You're already eliminated. We're not going to see a 3-loss team in this current format until it expands. When it expands, sure, we'll see a 3-loss team. We saw South Carolina last year, right, make a run, and they were a 3-loss team. They didn't get in because this committee's not going to allow it. They would rather take a 2-loss ACC team, a 2-loss Big 12 team, than a 3-loss team anywhere else. So, to me, Tennessee was already out before the night even started, and I echoed what B-Mac said. They had to win that game. They didn't against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma still has a chance to get in. Who's another big loser from this first rankings that you said, oh, that's not ideal for them?
I think for now, it's Oregon.
Okay.
Now, Oregon gets a chance to render it all moot. They play a ranked Iowa this week. They will play Washington later coming home. They may end up in the Big Ten championship game when all is said and done. They have it all to play for. Everything is in front of them. But this resume that you're seeing right here and this ranking, number 9, is just an indictment of the Ducks' resume to date. Again, they have it all to play for. I'm not really putting much stock in that Penn State win, even though Penn State was number 3 at the time. We know what they have been since that whiteout loss. It just shows that Oregon's resume to date has not been very good.
This would go a long way if they're able to go on the road to Iowa City and beat the Hawkeyes. That is going to be a massive game to watch. Richard Johnson, Brad Crawford here, and BMAC with us on CBS Sports HQ. Oregon with the 5th most points per game in FBS, 41.3. Iowa, the 4th fewest points per game allowed in FBS, 13.1. This is a classic something's got to give matchup. You can see the game on CBS, streaming live on Paramount Plus, 3:30 Eastern on Saturday. We'll have pregame and postgame coverage right here on CBS Sports HQ. And we will have continued coverage of the college football playoff each and every week here on HQ. As you take a look at our first projected bracket, a thing of beauty, the top 4, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama, who has 4 ranked wins this season, owning the top 4 spots in the first college football playoff rankings. 11 games will be played, culminating with the national championship in Miami. Coming up, a full bracket breakdown. BMAC is back to fill out his bracket, and you have to see who he's got winning it all. That's next on CBS Sports HQ. It's year 2 of the 12-team college football playoff, and here's a look at the projected bracket based on the first set of CFP rankings. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama would receive a first-round bye. Seeds 5 through 12 will play each other in the first round. The higher-seeded teams will play host. As you take a look at our top matchup going from top to bottom, Georgia hosting Memphis, Oregon and Texas Tech clashing in a matchup between 2 of the top offenses in the nation. Top 10 in yards per game are the Ducks and the Red Raiders. Virginia visiting Ole Miss. Notre Dame clashing with BYU in the first round. 11 games to be played, culminating with the national championship in Miami. Every Tuesday, we'll be doing a full bracket breakdown with a guest picker here on HQ. And hitting leadoff, the hard hitter himself, welcoming 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden, you like that lead in right there for you, BMAC. Here for the bracket breakdown. We did this last year. This is always fun, filling out the bracket, just like college basketball. We need to start thinking about quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, and quad 4 qualifications here, because then we can have a better idea of what some of these wins mean instead of just record strength, because we're still trying to understand what the committee thinks each and every week about who's where and who's going where. But we're going to have fun here because it's pretty simple. Let's start with a bracket. Let's start at the top here. Start in Athens. You and I have been there. We love going there. Georgia would host Memphis. Are the Dogs on upset alert in the classic 12-5 matchup?
Well, Hakeem, before I get into the breakdown of my bracket, I got to give a small disclaimer to the fans that are watching. I know some of you guys will be cursing me out, sending me bad messages on X and on social media, and I know there will be some fans that will be applauding my mindset. Remember, this is week 1. This is the first week of the college football playoff bracket, so a lot can happen between now and championship night. But here it is, and here's how I see it. To answer your first question, Memphis, you got a 5 versus a 12. Memphis playing UGA in Athens, no question. This is a get-right moment for Kirby Smart and his Bulldogs team. I have UGA advancing to the second round.
Okay, so in the next projected matchup, Oregon would travel to Lubbock to play Texas Tech, BMAC. Who's advancing to play Ohio State?
Man, when you look at the Oregon Ducks, of course, we talked about where they currently sit in terms of their entire team. But it's hard to overlook a Dan Lannon coach team in terms of the physical mindset and their execution to play at a high level in the more critical moments in college football. So I have Dan Lannon and the Oregon Ducks advancing. Story-filled year for Texas Tech, #1 being in the playoffs, but this is what was expected when they spent the money they spent to get these high-level transfers into the building. But in terms of the execution and just the style of play, and don't forget, they've been dealing with some quarterback injury as well. Byron Morton, he's been in and out of the lineup. We don't know what his status could be in terms of this potential matchup. Give me the Oregon Ducks to advance to the second round.
All right, down the bracket, projected ACC champ Virginia against Ole Miss. Who you got there?
Well, hotty toddy, the tailgating will be at a high level there in terms of playing at home for the Rebels. I have Ole Miss advancing. When you look at Lane Kiffin, I mean, he should be one of the when you talk about Coach of the Year honors and awards, you got to throw Lane Kiffin into that mix in terms of what he's done. I love Trinidad Chambliss. Since he's jumped into the saddle, their offense has taken a whole nother level with him being a +1 in the running game. I just love their style of play. And some people might feel like UVA, they would be the SMU from 2024 and 2025 in terms of what they've done, and no one is expecting them to have an extended stay in the playoffs. Give me Ole Miss advancing.
All right, all chalk so far here. Let's go to the 10-7 matchup. Notre Dame against BYU with a looming rematch for the Fighting Irish against Indiana. BMAC, do we get that rematch from 1 year ago, Notre Dame and Indiana?
Yes, we do. We will get that matchup, and here's why. When you look at Hakeem Marcus Freeman and the one lofty mistake he did early in the year, abandoning the running game. When you have 2 NFL pros in the backfield at any given time, you have to lean on the running game. But since those 2 early losses to Miami and A&M, Hakeem, you know what he's been doing? Handing off right, handing off left. And they've been excelling and making things easier for the entire offense. I expect that mindset to take place against BYU. Great year for BYU. I can't overlook what they've done. But in terms of this matchup, give me the Fighting Irish fighting on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking that matchup because you got two-headed monster for Notre Dame in Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, and you got a two-headed monster at Indiana with Kalen Black and Roman Hemby. So we're going to be running the ball, and you saw what they did last week. All right, let's move to the quarterfinals. Georgia against Alabama, renewing pleasantries, one of the best rivalries in all of college football. Who you got here?
It's very, very hard to beat a team twice in the same year. It's very, very hard to beat a Kirby Smart-led team also. I have Gunnar Stockton and the Bulldogs advancing. Ty Simpson has been phenomenal. When you look at what Kalen DeBoer has done since week 1 has been phenomenal as well in terms of the dedication, being dialed in. But like I said, Hakeem, this is a neutral site game. It's hard to beat a team twice, not to mention Kirby Smart, who is the best coach in college football. He's not losing to Kalen DeBoer twice. I don't see that happening. I have UGA finding a way to win this ball game. Oh, by the way, they're the best second half team in college football. And hopefully by
Is that a
then,
good thing, though? They've been playing with their food, as you always say. They're a second-half team. I don't know if that's a good thing.
yeah, it's not a good thing, but how many Bulldogs have you seen play with their food for an entire year? Not many. This Bulldog gonna eat in the first half in this matchup. You better believe that. They won't be playing with their dog food just in the second half. They're gonna eat in the first half. So I have UGA advancing. Roof.
I love it. All right, next quarterfinal matchup, Oregon against Ohio State for the second year in a row. Who you got there? You going quack, quack, or you give me the Buckeyes?
The benefit Ohio State had a year ago, playing in round one. Right? We watched that game together, me and you, against Tennessee, and that jump started something for Ohio State. Well, because of how well they played in the regular season, they have a first round bye. It won't matter. Give me Ohio. Give me the Buckeyes. The best defense in college football. My guy Hakeem will have on his favorite Buckeye tie. Listen, they will take care of business. And when you look at Oregon, this team has been showing ebbs and flows, right? Inconsistencies, big flashes here or there. One thing about Ohio State, you know exactly what you're going to get and when you're going to get it. Julian saying, I'm just saying, he's been balling. Jeremiah Smith, once again, one of the best wide receivers in college football. You know who might be number two?
Carnell Tate.
Carnell Tate. In terms of the defense, they got pro after pro after pro. Give me the Ohio State Buckeyes. And listen, remember what Jeremiah Smith told me at the end of the Wisconsin defeat. He said he believed this 2025 Ohio State Buckeye team is better than the 2024 team that won the national championship. And he said that weeks ago.
You got to do OH. So if I say OH, you say IO. OH!
I-O.
There we go. That's the correct chant that we do. We don't do hot whatever you did. I don't know what you did there. That was great. I loved it.
I'm sorry. I thought
If you're going to say my home state, I don't care how you say my home state. If you chant it, I'm happy for it. Say it. It's all good. All right, let's talk about the next matchup here. Keep moving through the bracket. Ole Miss against Texas A&M. Who's advancing in your bracket here at SEC matchup?
I got to go A&M. I mean, Hakeem, let's keep it real. For you, for all the college football fans that are watching us, Texas A&M has probably been the most impressive team in college football. When you look at what they've done and how they've dominated, you know what I mean? When you look at Marcel Reed at the quarterback position, they got running backs, they got wide receivers, and that defensive front can rush the passer. The storied season for the Lane Train stops against A&M. I have A&M advancing.
Well, I'll tell you what, Texas A&M's win against Notre Dame is one of the best we've seen all season, that 41-40 game in early September. And that takes us right to Notre Dame, the last quarterfinal matchup, Notre Dame against Indiana, a rematch from 1 year ago. You know what happened. Notre Dame advanced, got all the way to the national championship. What happens now in this matchup a year later?
Curt Cignetti is like the Mike Tomlin of college football. All he does is win.
Wow,
Regardless who's in the lineup, all he does is win. And you talked about last year, this being a rematch. Remember what jump-started that win for Notre Dame? Jeremiah Love taking it 90-plus yards to the house. I don't see that happening. I don't see them allowing splash plays through the running game. I believe Indiana, led with the potential first overall selection in Mendoza, finding a way to advance to the next round. Give me the Hoosiers. And I'm not talking about basketball. I'm talking about football. I got Indiana winning this one.
Yeah, Indiana chasing its first football title in school history, and they are moving on. That'll be a tough matchup. We'll get to that in a moment. Now to the semifinals, Georgia versus Ohio State. Who is playing for the Natty?
Boy, it gets good, right? Who wouldn't want to see this matchup? Thank me later.
I mean, we saw it a couple years ago. It was incredible.
Georgia. This was a Peach Bowl. This is a Peach Bowl rematch 2 years ago.
Yep,
with C.J. Stroud 3 years ago, his last year. And we saw how that played in favor of UGA. I have something different happening. I talked about the pros that Ohio State has, arguably the most talented team from top to bottom, not to mention the best defense. The best thing that happened for Ohio State was Penn State stealing Jim Knowles away. Because initially we thought it was going to be an issue. But in comes the guy who puts the pencil in his ear, Matt Patricia. What he's done with this defense, implementing NFL schemes and strategies to their defense has been outstanding. It will be a bit too much for Gunnar Stockton and Kirby Smart. And you know how much I love Kirby Smart as a head coach. But I won't love him too much in this matchup. Give me Ohio State advancing.
All right, so the defending national champions get back to the national championship. Who are they going to play the other semifinal? Texas A&M against Indiana. Who we got here? Does Ohio State and Indiana match up for perhaps the second straight time because they'd be playing in the Big Ten championship? What do you got here? Texas A&M, Aggies, Hoosiers. Who you got?
This is great for college football in terms of the parity. Indiana, Texas A&M, a game away from a championship game, but I have A&M winning it. When you look at their team, I think the key main factor for them winning this ball game, their quarterback in Marcel Reed. When you look at what Indiana has faced today, as of now, they haven't seen an athletic guy like they will see in Marcel Reed in terms of the +1 he is in running the football. He reminds me a lot of Jaden Daniels. Remember when he was at LSU, Hakeem, we watched many together watching him, how smooth and fluid he was, and just his ability to get positive yards in an untimely fashion for the defense. That's who Marcel Reed reminds me of. And I think that athleticism, that playmaker at the quarterback position will be a bit too much for the Hoosiers. Give me A&M advancing to the national championship in Miami.
Okay, so here it is for all the marbles. Texas A&M against Ohio State for the national championship. Who's cutting down the nets?
Who's cutting down the nets, even though we know this football? Just follow us here, Gibber. Who will receive the confetti? OH!
I-O!
I got Ohio State coming.
Oh,
I got Ohio State winning this. Now, listen, when you look at both teams today, Hakeem, I mean, who wouldn't sign up for this? Like I said, arguably A&M has been the most impressive team in college football. Ohio State arguably has been the most dominant team in college football. What happens when that impressive style meets the dominant style? Who will take it all? I got Ohio State winning. I have Ohio State winning. It's about, when you look at what Julian Sain has done, he could easily be the Heisman winner this season in terms of the accuracy. He's the most accurate quarterback in college football. When you look at his wide receivers, I mean, he has 3 legit pros in terms of the top 3 rotation at the wide receiver position. The offensive line quietly has done a serviceable job, but then the defense. I talked about Marcel Reed and how he has changed A&M for the better. Well, Ohio State has a bunch of dudes who look like what they hunt. They look exactly like what they hunt. Have you ever seen a gazelle hunt a gazelle, Hakeem? You don't usually see that.
right? I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well,
Just
Ohio
a lion.
State got a bunch of gazelles that go hunt gazelles. And guess what? When a gazelle hunts a gazelle, because of the same speed and athleticism, they usually catch them. That's going to be an issue for A&M in terms of that defense by Ohio State. Give me Ohio State taking it all.
Well, usually if you were to eat a Buckeye, it would poison you. So
I'm not eating a Buckeye.
Right,
I don't want
right.
that.
But if you have the kind of Buckeyes that my family makes, it's chocolate with peanut butter inside it. It's like a Reese's Pieces, or like a Reese's Cup sort of. It's delicious. That's what we serve you, a Buckeye. It's delicious.
Okay.
Great dessert. And they're going to be serving.
You got to bring something into the office one day. I'll try it with you.
Yeah, we'll get some cookies as long as we send them to the right studio. Okay. So make sure we get that done. All right. We'll get the cookies. We'll get the cake. We'll get the bubbly for Ohio State. National champions once again, back-to-back champs, 10th time in school history. We'll play the music. Ohio State, national champ. We got confetti and all. So fancy. Bracket breakdown here with Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, appreciate you. I know you probably just did this just for me because I was hosting. You're probably like, let me play to the host and pick the right guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Here's a look at the odds to win the national championship. Ohio State, shortest odds to run it back at +220, followed by Indiana. B-Mac had him getting knocked out by Texas A&M in the semis. Indiana chasing its first football title in school history. Alabama there at +750. They come in at number 4 in the first college football playoff rankings, and they've got 4 ranked wins. That's more than anybody in the nation. As you take a look at who's going to cut down the nets. I joked, it's basketball, right? But that's what we talk about with the NCAA tournament. And now we've got ourselves a bracket in college football in year 2. Ohio State looking to run it back. Last school to win back-to-back natties in 2021 and 2022.